The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
It is not only one of the more unbelievable stories in sports, at a time when we've got hockey playoffs, basketball playoffs, baseball season going on, and draft recap, Kentucky Derby is this weekend. It's the number one story in sports. Bill Belichick and the 24-year-old girlfriend. Who'd have thought that would have happened, especially with Bill Belichick, who spent his life trying to avoid distractions for his football team. Anything he can to stay out of the media, he has done, and now in his 70s, he can't stay out of it. And it's not just the sports media. It's spilled over to The View, People Magazine, you name it. It's salacious, it's juicy, and it's something that everybody wants to talk about, which we will. Coming up shortly, we'll also take a look at the Defenders, who have a game this weekend on the road. They're off to a good start again. They won they didn't win the championship 2 years ago, but they were in the championship game, and it looks like they have a good chance to get back there. Again, we'll get to that later this hour. Also, you got to talk about the Lakers. They're out, and everybody is flipping out about that, of course, at ESPN, because two teams fuel ESPN, the Lakers and the Cowboys. And if they're good, that's better. If they're bad, that's good too. So we'll get to their exit against Minnesota the other night and the fallout from that and all that other stuff. But we had a game last night where the Knicks move on against the Detroit Pistons. Pistons a heck of a story. They won 14 games last year. They were even worse than the Wizards. And they put together an excellent season this year, got into the playoffs, and gave the Knicks a run for their money. But the Knicks were able to take care of business in Detroit last night, winning 116-113. So they move on against the Celtics and will try to get to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in 25 years. Yeah, last time that they got that far was when they went to the finals. This is a year that Patrick Ewing was hurt, and the San Antonio Spurs in what was it was a lockout year, right? It wasn't a strike. It was a lockout, and they didn't start the season until after the first of the year, the 99-2000 season. Ewing was hurt. Knicks made it to the finals and lost to the San Antonio Spurs. But Jalen Brunson, who curiously was on the bench at the end of their previous game, which they lost to the Pistons, came out big last night, scored 40 points and a three-pointer, which turned out to be the winning basket, put them ahead 116-113. But there were still 4.6 seconds left to go. And 4.6 seconds in the NBA, where you call the timeout and you get the ball at half court, that's an eternity. You should be able to at least get off a three-point shot to potentially tie the game, but that didn't happen. Cade Cunningham, who's been a huge addition to them this year, hustled to the top of the key to get back. He got doubled and passed it to Malik Beasley on the wing with 2 seconds to go, and the ball went through Beasley's hands and out of bounds, and that ended the Pistons' season. This is Malik Beasley after the game. Now, I want you to listen closely to the claim that Malik freaking Beasley, who's 28 years old, says about himself and what happened at the end of the game.
It's been us against the world, our team. And so for us to stay together, for us to build on it, I think obviously the pain hurts. AT was pissed that, he is the best defender in the world, and he should have felt like he got to stop on that last possession. I'm the best shooter in the world. I feel like I should have got on the best in the last possession. So with that being said, you can't dwell on it too much. You got to get ready for the next season. It's my favorite part of the season, the off season. It's where I get better, and you just got to stay in tune with the guys and continue to get better this whole summer.
First of all, AT is Asser Thompson, and Beasley hit the shot over him. Second part, where he says, Malik freaking Beasley says, I'm the best shooter in the game. No, you're not. You're not the best shooter, because the best shooter is the best shooter of all time. That is Steph Curry. You may have heard of Steph Curry. He's got more three-pointers than anybody in the history of the game. He is the best three-point shooter. And it was his three-point shooting that delivered the gold medal for the United States of America in these past Olympics. Is he a good shooter? Yeah, of course he is. He's averaged 16.3 points a game, shot 43% from the floor, and 41.6% from three. So he is a good three-point shooter. He is not the best three-point shooter. and I guess that's a way you can make a name for yourself, making a proclamation like that and go, who the hell is Malik Beasley? Oh, really? He says he's the best shooter in the game? No, he is not the best shooter in the game. All right, let's move on to Bill Belichick. And, the thing about sports is when it moves outside of what we used to call the sports page, nobody gets the actual newspaper anymore. Not even I. I've canceled my actual newspaper subscription. I'm going to keep the online for the Post, but I've done away with the actual sports page, which I can look at online, of course, but don't get the actual newspaper in my hand. Anyway, when it spills over from that page into another page, and the style section, as it is today in the Washington Post, with a story by Emily Yar, and the headline is Belichick's Sweetheart Interference, and it's all about the story we've been talking about since Sunday morning, when this was an absolute stunner. CBS Sunday Morning, which is a light show, human interest. They did an interview with Bill Belichick about the book that he has, The Art of Winning, essentially an autobiography about his life. And his girlfriend, Jordan Hudson, was there. Now, in normal circumstances, we never would have seen her. But she was interfering so much with the interview that they decided to include her in the part where Belichick is asked how he met Jordan Hudson, and she walks in and says, no, don't answer that. You don't usually see that, and especially on a piece for that show. It's usually birds chirping or, some nice story of a man who is a wonderful guy and fixed bicycles, or, somebody who did something kind for somebody else. That's what that show is. So this has ignited just a huge brush fire all week long, which again spills over to the style section today. And Emily Yar writes about what the reaction is across the country, including from Fox Sports Radio, where it was said Bill Belichick has a problem named Jordan Hudson. CBS Boston chatted with Patriots fans who called the interview weird and cringy. TMZ Sports. See, once you get to TMZ, then it really gets sexy. TMZ Sports stationed a cameraman outside a New York City hotel where the couple stayed this week on The View. It's on The View now. On The View, the Hudson interruption was analyzed as one of the show's hot topics, as Sonny Hostin deemed it the kind of inappropriate and improper, and Joy Behar said, I don't think you should judge. Maybe she has a nursing degree. Ooh, he is 73 years old. And then, you heard this week that Belichick complained that the segment that they used, which is about 8.5 minutes, came of a 35-minute conversation, which he should know by this time, all these years of doing interviews, that that's how it works. They shoot a lot of video and they use what they want. And he said it was selective editing, and they just used a few minutes to suggest, as he said, a false narrative that Jordan was attempting to control the conversation, which is simply not true. Well, it was pretty obvious from what they showed that she was attempting to control the conversation, and it was even reported that she walked out of the interview and expected Bill to follow her, which she did not. CBS, of course, said that there were no preconditions or limitations on the interview. That's probably par for the course for them. That's CBS News. That's the way they do things. Pro Football Talk reported this week that Hudson interrupted the interview many more times than what you saw in the piece. CBS producers ultimately aired it, explaining why they chose to include the brief glimpse of the behind-the-scenes drama. CBS News did not respond to the Post questions about the interview. But, you had to leave it in there. As they said on the interview, that she was a constant presence there. So, rather than cut all that out, and everybody wanted to know, I mean, of course you're going to ask that question. It's a 73-year-old man with a 24-year-old woman who's posted pictures of them like in this weird scene on the beach where she's wearing a mermaid outfit and he's wearing a fisherman's outfit, and that, Titanic Pilates pose where he's on the ground and his feet are holding her up. That's just a weird stuff. That's just not stuff you're going to see with Bill Belichick. Hey, substitute, it wouldn't happen, of course, because Joe Gibbs is a very religious man and has been very happily married to his wife, Pat, for a long, long time, and they've suffered horrible personal tragedy together, losing both of their sons. So this wouldn't happen. But just think of Joe Gibbs in this circumstance. It wouldn't happen, obviously. But Bill Belichick is on that short list with Gibbs as the greatest coaches of all time in the NFL. Throw in who you want, Shula, Lombardi, Bill Walsh. You don't get that many on that group, and Belichick is one of them. And again, he did everything he could during his career with the Patriots to try and stay out of the media, not giving the media anything in the news conference. We're on to Cincinnati, grumble, grumble, grumble. And he, like all coaches, hates distractions. Well, as he's getting ready to coach North Carolina, you couldn't have bigger distractions that are going on right now. So anyway, we get to what Kristen Fleming has written in the New York Post today. And her lead is, as the saying goes, there's no fool like an old fool. Amen to that. It goes back and, talks about when Belichick took over at North Carolina. He asked that she be CC'd on all of his correspondence with the athletic department. Really? She's not an employee, but she's got her hooks into him. And it's also been reported that she's accumulated this real estate portfolio of over $8 million. Where does she get that kind of money at 24? Probably with her muse there. This is another thing she writes here. Lesson 1 about the interview with CBS: don't do what Hudson did. Lesson 2: don't be the man who lets her. And that's the most baffling thing about all of this. This is a football coach who is in control of everything, including the media narrative, as we heard the other day from one of his ex-players, that he would read the media clips on the treadmill every morning before he met with his team, and he would say to the team before they would do their own interviews, because players are available on Wednesday. Ross Tucker, played a couple of years in New England. He said that, okay, these are the narratives out there. This is what they're going to ask you about. Be prepared for this, that, and the other. He's media savvy, and now he's got this 24-year-old woman who's controlling everything, and she's saying, "Don't answer that." I mean, he could have easily, and she should know this. He could have easily grumbled past that. He could have said, well, we met on a plane and I really don't want to get into all the details. That's all. But she comes in and makes it a story by saying, don't talk about that. Don't talk about that. She writes here, and this is, again, from the Kristen Fleming column in the New York Post. Sorry, Coach, but in what world would CBS Sunday Morning, an iconic show that focuses on human interest, agree to only ask about the book? But hey, if Hudson didn't post cheeseball photos of her and Belichick Pilates in the sand and cosplaying as mermaid and horny fisherman, then perhaps there wouldn't be so much human interest as to what the hell got into this man. She writes, he has publicly aligned himself with her both personally and professionally. Making questions about their relationship fair game to avoid them would be journalistic malpractice. Of course. If CBS runs this puff piece about Bill Belichick and the 6 Super Bowl trophies and doesn't address this cavorting he's been doing with this woman for over a year, where she dresses as provocatively as she can, hangs all over him, and make sure that she's right by his side for everything, then they wouldn't be doing their job. And she writes, if you're promoting a book about your life, you can't simply have it both ways. It's also been reported that Hudson tanked the North Carolina deal to do Hard Knocks. Remember, there was that deal that was going to be in place. They were going to follow Belichick as his first year at North Carolina. And she, according to the New York Post, demanded that she be named an executive producer. The Hard Knocks people were like, we can't deal with this, goodbye, and they walked away. This is NFL Films. NFL Films has been producing award-winning work for 60 years, more than that. They started in 1962. the great Ed Sable and his son Steve, who are both in the Football Hall of Fame. They know how to produce these things. You don't need this 24-year-old woman as your executive producer, so they said, the hell with that. And then the latest on this, and we're going to see where this goes, because this I think is the tip of the iceberg on where the family might be right now. He has a son, Bill Belichick's son, Steven, is on the staff now at North Carolina. He worked with him in New England, and last year he spent a year on the staff with the University of Washington. His wife is named Jennifer Schmidt, and she chimed in on Instagram where Julian Edelman said Hudson was acting as his publicist. That's Julian Edelman, who played for Belichick, of course. And she wrote, "Publicists act in a professional manner and don't storm off the set, delaying an interview." Sue, the plot thickens. And look, it's juicy. And again, think of any of these other great coaches. And he's right there. He's won more Super Bowls than anybody else. Or you can throw in Chuck Noll, who won 4. You think he'd be doing this? No. Think Bill Belichick? You think Joe Gibbs? No, of course not. Do you think Tom Landry would do something? No. Don Shula? No. But this is happening with Bill Belichick. And, you think about people and their legacy. And for whatever has been written about Johnny Carson and maybe what a terrible guy he was, et cetera, he walked away and we never saw him again, except for showing up on David Letterman once. Once he stopped doing the Tonight Show in 1992, and when he died, 12 or 13 years later, we never saw him. Never heard a thing about him. And I think what you have to do sometimes is just walk away. And Belichick couldn't do that. The time to do it probably would have been after the 6th Super Bowl. Just walk away and leave Tom Brady to somebody else. Or when Brady left, you spend a year proving you can win without him, which I guess he made the playoffs the next year and lost the playoff game. And then, he had to be – he denied that he was fired, even though Bob Kraft said he was fired. He said it was a mutual parting of the ways. But this is not the way your legacy should go. And it's too bad because, if all of this doesn't happen, the deterioration of the Patriots and now this, he's held in incredibly high esteem, as he should be as a coach. But it looks like his end is going to be tinged with, oh, my God, look at this. Oh, God, kind of that car wreck thing on the side of the road. Alex Smith was on yesterday on the Rich Eisen show. He has become, after being kind of a really blah interview, I thought, in the news conferences when he was quarterbacking here, he's become an excellent, excellent broadcaster. He's on ESPN. He does a podcast and was on Eisen's show yesterday with some really good observations about making it as a quarterback in the NFL. We'll get to that more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
So it's been 20 years since Alex Smith was drafted number one by the San Francisco 49ers. He was coming out of Utah. And it's funny to look back on that draft, especially with Aaron Rodgers still drifting around there in the wind. It's assumed that he's going to wind up in Pittsburgh, but who knows? There's always such mishigas with him. And, he plays that, I got a lot of things going on. Might have to meditate, might have to go into a dark room. A lot of things that are being said about me aren't true, blah, 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 blah. So at some point, he'll either retire or he'll be back in the NFL, whatever. But you forget that in that draft, it was going into it a coin flip between Alex Smith and Aaron Rodgers. One of them was going to go number one overall, and the other one, it was assumed, wouldn't fall very far down the draft board. And that was one of the early green room uncomfortable days. This is when the draft was held on a Saturday. It started on a Saturday at noon. So Smith gets picked, right away by San Francisco, and they put the hat on and hold up the jersey and the whole thing. And then you see Rodgers sit in the green room all day and they have Susie Colbert interview him like 5 or 6 times. And finally he goes the pick before Washington. And, man, you think about that how incredible that would have been had they jumped up to get him. But they didn't. In fact, they were picking 9th that year, I believe, and they took Carlos Rogers. And Carlos Rogers was a pretty good corner, except he couldn't catch anything. and dropped a number of pick sixes, including one in a playoff game against Seattle. But think if they would have taken Aaron Rodgers there and how things might have been different, and Joe Gibbs to develop them and all those things that would have gone along with it. Anyway, Smith is now doing very well on television. I think he's excellent on ESPN. And he also does a podcast called The Glue Guys with Shane Battier, and he is making the rounds, I guess, doing a product push. Was on Rich Eisen yesterday and talked about that 2005 draft and what it felt like to be drafted. And if you look at his record, he struggled early on. It took him a few years to get going. I remember the Redskins played him in his rookie year, and he was god-awful. I think they won like 52-10 or something. That I think was the game where they had the 14-topping pizza. One of the pizza places that was sponsoring them, it was either Papa John's or Domino's, or one of them said they would give you a free topping for every touchdown Washington scored, and if they won the game, they'd double it. So it was a 14-topping pizza, which they said they couldn't even cook because there were too many toppings for it. Anyway, Alex Smith yesterday on being drafted number one, and developing quarterbacks who are taken high in the draft, and what it means to go through that.
You're sitting in the green room at that round table, right? It was like an outer body experience. That phone that's sitting in the middle of the table, like you're like, how did this phone even get here? And then, you get the phone call, and it's, for me, it was Scott McCloughan and Mike Nolan, and Mike McCarthy was the offensive coordinator at the Niners at the time. And that they were going to take me number one overall. And again, walking out on stage, it was all like a dream. Literally, it was an event as a football kid that I grew up watching the draft, and you just, again, never imagine that it would ever be you doing it. Just the odds, right? We all know the odds of being able to play professionally, and let alone being the number one overall pick. And so, again, 20 years ago, Rich, that was 20 years ago. I'm 40. That was half a lifetime ago for me.
Dude, 20 years ago, Commissioner Tagliabue was the commissioner.
I know. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Damn. Yeah. So what would your advice, well, what hasn't changed is the pressure that comes with being the first overall pick. What would your advice to Cam Ward be, Alex?
Yeah, it's funny. The expectations haven't changed, but what has is certainly the college landscape. And I don't think Cam needs a ton of advice. Like, I think I look at the difference between his experience and mine. Again, for me being 20 years old, coming from the Mountain West to the NFL, to the San Francisco 49ers. Back then, when I signed my contract, I was one of the highest paid players in the league. There was so much weight that came with all of those expectations, right? Like you look at Cam's journey, it's just so different. And all these college quarterbacks, right? There's a college marketplace now. So these guys stay in college longer. Cam has played at 3 schools, right? He's done this before. He's moved to a new place and had high expectations and delivered, and then done it again. He's basically been a professional athlete at the collegiate level. Again, I just think he's far more prepared. He's had a bigger college career. Like I think he's more comfortable with who he is and his game. And again, he just doesn't. It's this nice level up for these quarterbacks now. It was no different than Jaden Daniels a year ago, Bo Nix. These guys that have had huge college careers, they've basically become professional athletes already. They have moved and played in different environments. Again, for me, juxtapose that to, coming from Salt Lake and again, the Mountain West at that point as a 20-year-old kid to the NFL, it just was such a bigger jump. And it took me, a few years, right? Like several years to find my way. And again, these guys I think are better for it. And that's why we're seeing such great rookie football, especially out of the QBs, right? Like I don't think it's a coincidence that CJ Stroud and Jaden Daniels and all these guys that are playing so well, so fast. And I think Cam Ward will keep that up.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking to Tyler Shuck, Alex, a couple of weeks ago, and
he's almost as old as me.
You know what? Exactly. You know what?
I'm just joking, Tyler. I'm joking.
No, I know. He's 25, but he said what he's telling teams is I'm the most pro-ready guy because not just of his age, but he's come back from injury. He's changed schools. Sometimes not of his own doing. He's had different coordinators, different coaches, different playbooks. Yeah. And then, 3 weeks before I was interviewing Jalen Hurts for the Super Bowl, Alex, and I mentioned to him how he's going to have another, probably most likely another offensive coordinator this year. And sure enough, that's true because the guy who drafted Tyler Shuck is there in New Orleans. And Hurts was like, yeah, tell me about it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And that's the Super Bowl MVP quarterback. That's the world of quarterbacking now, it seems like.
Yeah, Tyler is a great example. Like you said it. For one, he's played at different programs. He's moved around and played under different offenses. So I think he's more prepared, again, to learn a new offense quickly. Like those are all great things to have under his belt. The other thing is this is a kid that's faced adversity already. I think I look back at myself at that point like I hadn't. Right? Like I had not faced adversity. I hadn't faced expectations, and Tyler has and has gone through that process. And I think he's better for it. So I totally agree that I think he's more prepared for this moment. Again, because of those things he's gone through. And I know this guy that has dealt with a lot of adversity in his college career, incredibly talented. I think it's going to serve him well that he has worked through it. And come out the other side.
That said, Alex Smith, what is your assessment of the number of years a quarterback should be given to reach potential years? And I've asked this of Goff, I've asked this of Baker Mayfield, and obviously you had success at San Francisco before you left, and then clearly after you left. So what's your assessment of the patience that should be required of fans and coaches of the quarterbacks that just got drafted?
Yeah, I mean, I think more. I think we all need more patience with these young guys. I think, unfortunately, there's this thought process in the NFL that you're kind of a finished product, and very few places or regimes or organizations allow draft picks, not just quarterbacks, but time to develop and grow. And it's certainly, I think, one of the amazing attributes of Andy Reid. Like, I think he does a better job with development. He is more patient with guys. He allows them to make mistakes. Like, I can't tell you how many places I've been where like they coach out of fear, right? Like you become terrified to make mistakes, right? Like you feel like you can't. And let me tell you, if you go out there and play guarded like that, your chances of having success and ever reaching your potential. And so I think the good places do it, but the problem is they're few and far between. I'm not. We're part of the problem, Rich, as a media member now, like in adding to this, the pressure that's on these young guys and the fan bases and to be good right now. And unfortunately guys like, Jaden Daniels, who arguably had maybe the greatest rookie season in American sports history, right? Like, it's, obviously I think that affects all of us. Like, why can't our guy be like that? And again, this is coming from, me, I arguably had maybe the worst rookie season ever. So it's a nature of it. I think it's something you have to like take head on though, right? Like you can't pretend like it's not there. It is a reality. And, I think you have to embrace it and lean into it to be able to try to work through it.
Alex Smith didn't have the worst rookie season ever. Appreciate his modesty. But Jamarcus Russell was absolutely horrible. So I think he retires the trophy for that. But, yeah, he was not good his first couple of years, really. And he credits, really, his career to Jim Harbaugh, who came in and, he was on his way out, he thought, and Harbaugh liked him. He kept him. Of course, he benched him for Colin Kaepernick the year they went to the Super Bowl. But he had played well enough to move on to Kansas City. And he became a really good quarterback in Kansas City. That was probably the high water mark of his career. And, in his last year in 2017, they knew this was going to be the case, but they did it the right way. They had Patrick Mahomes in, but they told him, you're going to sit and you're going to learn from a real pro here in Alex Smith. And we know how that turned out. This is Smith on what he did in his final year in Kansas City and what he saw from Patrick Mahomes, even as he was having a good year. They made the playoffs that year. And he came here in a trade. He understands how valuable it is to have that veteran guy to bring along a young player, which he really didn't have in San Francisco. I mean, even if you look at the greats of all time, Steve DeBerg was helping John Elway to get used to the NFL. In fact, he did it for 3 different quarterbacks. He did it for Dan Marino, and he did it for Joe Montana. That's the way it used to work. You start a veteran guy until the rookie is ready to come along. Now, they tried that with Heath Schuler here in 1994 when they had John Freese, and they threw Schuler in, and he clearly wasn't ready to play and never was ready to play. Just probably wasn't smart enough to play the position and probably didn't put in the work. And the work is not in the weight room. The work is in the tape room. And this is Smith on how he was so impressed and what he was able to learn about Patrick Mahomes as he was his heir apparent in Kansas City.
It's hard when you're a backup quarterback and you're on the scout team. You don't get a lot of reps to shine. Again, as quarterbacks in practice, we wear this bright yellow jersey. You're kind of untouchable. There was no thing early on that he did that made you think, oh, he's got it. I think there were a couple things. One, his work ethic, though. This guy beat me into the office almost every morning. He was not afraid of work. He did the little things. I think how hard he worked in the classroom. I think it's something that gets overlooked. I think he's the best quarterback in the NFL at the line of scrimmage when you talk about making protection adjustments, getting to the right play. But the problem is he's so good improving that's all I think that gets the attention. Mm-hmm. I think as the season went on, though, there were throws that he made throughout, you'd see on the practice field and you start to see how fast he was processing. And then certainly that last game you referenced, to go out there in an NFL game and play the way he did. I think everybody that was there that day knew that he was ready. And certainly for me, you knew the writing was on the wall. It was a process though. And again, I think the ability to have some freedom to develop and not play right away, certainly could he have, of course. But I think, again, in Kansas City, they're reaping the rewards of that kind of patience.
I got to tell you, man, we were at the Super Bowl in Minneapolis. It was the Eagles versus the Patriots. On the day you got traded, we had Travis Kelce on the show, and he was broken up. You should know. He was totally broken up because you were his guy, and he was your guy. And he said he can't think of a time where, it's not Kelce and Alex Smith, and obviously looking back now, it's clearly something that we know he and Mahomes are locked at the hip, but he was busted up because you got traded, Alex.
Yeah, I played 5 years with Travis, right? He came in as a young buck, and I was kind of the old guy, and obviously we're still really close. But to see what him and Patrick have done, I mean, I think these guys are business owners now. I think they just opened a steakhouse, but their relationship is so cool to see from afar. I obviously get to come back to training camps. I know both of them so well. To see these guys are like stepbrothers off the field. And they are so incredibly close. They give each other such direct feedback all the time. And then it's obviously, I think, historic what they've done on the field. So incredibly cool. Obviously, Kelce's just an amazing human being, as is Patrick. And so I think, for you to share that, I didn't know that, but he's such an amazing guy. He pours his heart and soul into everything. And again, that's cool to know. But obviously, I think for me, it's special to see what those two have done. And again, their relationship and the human beings that they are, on top of obviously just being pretty good at football.
That's Alex Smith on Rich Eisen's show yesterday about what he saw in Patrick Mahomes. So last thing they talked about, and you can't have Alex Smith on without asking about it, is Washington. Now remember, this is an organization that he saw really the last gasp of it, really. I mean, he wasn't here for the last, 21 and 22 seasons. So the last 2 years of Snyder, he wasn't here. But he did make it back for 2020 after missing all of 2019 after the horrific broken leg that he suffered in 2018. And along the way, he had a front row seat to incredible dysfunction. I mean, this was just horrible. Jay Gruden gets fired. And remember, Jay Gruden, his contract was extended when they were going through all kinds of garbage with Scott McCloughan. Scott McCloughan was the GM of the 49ers when Alex Smith got drafted. McCloughan, they said, maybe it's true, maybe it wasn't, but they basically didn't have to pay him for what they owed him, they said. And I think they won this in court, that he was drinking, they said. But the way they handled this was the typical ham-handed way. There's the combine, the most important week of the year for a general manager. Scott McCloughan's not there. Why isn't Scott McCloughan there? Oh, he's dealing with the death of his grandmother. Yeah, his grandmother was 100 when she died a month earlier. So that wasn't the reason. And it was just, that kind of stuff going on. And then in all of that, they extended Jay Gruden to create a distraction. Gruden was really never a good coach here. And Smith was the quarterback in 2018. They had hopes. They were 6-2. Remember that. They were 6-2 or 6-3, I guess, before he got hurt. And then things kind of cratered from there. And then he got fired the following season. Smith comes back under Ron Rivera. Rivera didn't really want him. But he also agreed to take on Dwayne Haskins. That didn't work out, obviously. Another quarterback that he brought in got hurt, so Alex Smith got to play. And he played actually pretty well and got them to the playoffs. He won that last game in Philadelphia to get them there, and then Taylor Heineke quarterbacked against the Bucs, and that was it for Alex Smith. But in seeing what's happened now, after being a part of this organization for 3 years, 4 years, 2018, 19, 20. Yeah, 3 years. And seeing what was going on as the walls were caving in, and now with new ownership, new quarterback, general manager, et cetera, it's totally different.
It's so good, right? Like it isn't recognizable, Rich. Like it doesn't. And when I was there, that fan base was so frustrated and deservedly from decades of dysfunction. It is such a prideful fan base and organization that has great history. And given their year last year, and I think, man, doesn't leadership make a difference? And you think about the leadership at the ownership spot with Josh Harris. Dan Quinn, I think, is one of the best head coaches in the NFL. Adam Peters, who I know from his days in San Francisco, is so prepared for this. Look at the job he's done. And then that guy right there, Jaden Daniels, at the top, their future is so bright. To hear the announcement of the stadium, I mean, Rich, it was the worst game day experience in football. Going out to Landover and that stadium was kind of falling apart, and you would drive on my way home. I would drive right by RFK and wonder why we weren't there, And you would hear the glory days of the Hogs and all those memories there, and the waiting list for tickets. And to think that those days may be coming back is so cool. And I'm so happy for that fan base and everybody involved in that organization.
Worst game day experience in football. I think he played in Oakland when they were still in the Coliseum, which they shared with the A's. But, yeah, I think most people would agree. Worst game day experience in football. And as far as driving past RFK and saying, why aren't they there? Well, that's a very long story that predates him. And to be fair to Dan Snyder for a change, predates Snyder. Snyder wouldn't have gotten this deal done. Let's be clear about that. But what happened in 1994 or 5, whenever it was, when Jack Kent Cooke couldn't make the deal with the district and quickly bought up that farmland in Landover and built that monstrosity out there, that was on Cooke. That wasn't on Snyder. Snyder bought the team and the stadium and inherited that. Now, he didn't do a good job of, keeping that place up. The upkeep was terrible. And the second part of it was that he was such an objectionable person, he could never get a deal done with the District of Columbia. And with the cost of building stadiums now, he couldn't do it. He couldn't afford it. Yeah, he's sitting on $6 billion now from selling the team, but he would have been over-leveraged, and nobody was going in with a partner with him. So, Alex, that's a long story as to why it got built there. It has to do with a billionaire pinching the mayor on the tuchus and her calling him a billionaire bully and things devolving from there. And we had Raul John and a stadium that was never good from the beginning, and looks like they'll finally be out of there, but it's 5 more years to go. All right, coming up in the next hour, Brian Windhorst on the Lakers and where they go from here. And also, it was 26 years ago today that John Elway retired on the anniversary of one of the worst trades made in NFL history involving John Elway. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. You want to put ESPN out of business? You fold the Lakers and you fold the Cowboys. Well, none of that's going to happen. But that is the engine that drives the bus, those two teams. And each of them have underperformed lately. Well, the Cowboys for a long time now. It's been over 30 years since they won their last Super Bowl. Lakers did win the championship in 2020, but early exits since then. And the LeBron go-round, well, it keeps going round and keeps drawing eyeballs to the set and keeps them talking about the Lakers. he's flirting with retirement again. I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's going to come back. I think he wants to play another year with Bronny. And who knows? Maybe he may even pull it off so he can play with the other kid who's going to college this year. It's it's kind of nuts with the LeBron world. And we'll get to what Brian Windhorst said about the Lakers as they were eliminated the other night by Minnesota. This kind of snuck up on me, though I should know this. It's always the first Saturday in May, which is the Kentucky Derby, which kicks off the horse racing season, which is really the month of May and part of early June. That's it. It's 3 races. Most people don't pay much attention to horse racing the rest of the year. And even if you are paying attention to the Triple Crown races, well, they're only 2 minutes apiece, right? A little more than 2 minutes. So it's not a big time investment. Now, you can invest in all the pre-race stuff, and I think they start the coverage of the Derby, which is supposed to go just before 7 at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon or something like that. It's like 4 hours for all the Triple Crown races. But Kentucky Derby is set to go tomorrow, and it's cool this year because the favorite is named Journalism. Yeah, and what institution has been more under attack lately than journalism, right? Fake news, fake news, fake news. So this horse is it's kind of an interesting background, and my friend Kevin Blackistone, who's been a longtime journalist, wrote for many years for the Dallas Morning News, and now writes for the Washington Post on occasion, and teaches journalism at the University of Maryland. So he's got a column today, and he writes, because journalism is in the running, literally, every journalist covering the Derby should violate the order of no cheering in the press box. He says it's a bay colt coming from the 8th position, and if anyone needs a win, it is we, journalism. And he's got a quote from Aaron Wellman, who is the managing partner of the ownership group. He says, I do have a lot of respect for diligent, responsible, and smart journalists. It was never intended that we sort of became the media darling of the Kentucky Derby, but we will certainly take all the good energy and vibes coming journalism's way. And I think in this day and age, when freedom of speech and journalistic integrity is quite frankly under attack, it's pretty poignant that a horse named Journalism is receiving so much hype and attention as one of the main players in the biggest race. I would echo that. I don't really have a betting interest or a rooting interest in this, but I am interested in what happens in the Kentucky Derby, and why not? Why not root for journalists? I have not been a journalist for a long time. I don't consider myself a journalist, but I know a lot of people who are. Journalism's father, Kevin writes, was the 2007 and 2008 American Horse of the Year, who finished third in the 2007 Derby. Mopetism wasn't so accomplished, but Uncle Mo, as a 2-year-old in 2010, was an Eclipse Award champion. There's also another horse in the race named Publisher. That's a long shot. But as Kevin notes, publishers have also come under attack lately, including Jeff Bezos, who's lost a lot of subscribers for the Washington Post. So, kind of an interesting twist this year on the Kentucky Derby. Mike Wilbon always makes fun of Tony for being so enthusiastic about the Derby. I've covered a couple of them. I think it's a really cool event. I like to watch it on TV when I can. It won't be available to do that tomorrow, but it's a really nice thing. Anyway, Wilbon was on Jim Jackson's podcast. Jim Jackson was a great player at Ohio State, played a long time in the NBA, some of those years with the Dallas Mavericks, and now does a lot of broadcasting, including analysis for games and on-set stuff for the Big Ten Network. And I think he's involved in some Clipper coverage as well. I mean, he does a lot of different things in broadcasting. And he had Wilbon on the other day, and Wilbon talked about how PTI almost didn't get off the ground. I think he's embellishing a little bit because I think he really wanted to do this. But he said that he was very comfortable working for the Washington Post, doing well. And, although he stayed while he was still at PTI, he didn't know if he was ready to make a career leap into something that, in retrospect, seems silly that we might be thinking, hey, maybe that's not going to work with PTI now in its 24th year. But at the time, he didn't know how long it was going to last. Maybe it lasts 3 months. And that, Tony's always like that. Oh, yeah, it's only going to last 3 months. So anyway, this is Wilbon on how he was, talking to people that he knew and respected, including Gary Williams, who had actually recruited Jim Jackson to Ohio State, never coached him because that's when Gary came to Maryland in 1989. But they obviously know each other. Jackson wanted to play for him, of course, and then wound up playing at Ohio State anyway. But this is Mike on how talking to both Gary and his good friend Charles Barkley convinced him that PTI was the way to go.
You know, you have to have people who say to you, who get in your ear when someone wants you to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who get in your ear times and say, hey, are you paying attention? like your comfort zone is not important. This other thing, the world is moving, it's evolving.
Right.
And then people like Gary, when I say people like, I don't mean Gary was like in the chorus. I mean Gary's voice was important to both Tony Kornheiser and me and Charles Barkley.
Yeah.
You know, Charles took me to dinner and said, what do you mean you thinking about not doing this show? What are you talking about?
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Hold on, wait, back up. So you thought about, so you were doing a sports reporter. Now, keep in mind, people got to understand that you and Tony come from a journalistic background.
Yes.
Go in you. What is it? Go in you. How you say it in Northwestern? What's the chant?
Oh, go. You did.
What is it? Go. What?
You said it. You had it.
Yeah, that's it. So, but you come from that because
I went to Northwestern,
right, journalism school, and
Jim. But I wasn't looking. You know, it wasn't my goal. It wasn't my objective to be on the broadcast side. Because you said I was a print journalist. You know, working at the Washington Post.
Right.
And I just wasn't thinking about that. I was comfortable. I was, at the time, to be fair, being compensated in a way I never thought I would. I was, 18, 20, 25, 30 years old. And then, ESPN said, we want you and Tony to bring what you do as journalists to the screen. We're like, right, get out of here. And the people that knew us, they were, and Charles is, one of my best friends for the last 30 years is Charles Barkley. And I was with Charles. We were working on a book, Jim, and Chuck was like, he heard about the conversations because Charles is getting ready to segue, right? He's getting ready to transition to retirement in his own broadcast career. So he knows these conversations exist for different employers, potentially. And Charles and I were in Atlanta, and we're going to dinner. We went to this place called a Clubhouse in Buckhead, and he said, you got to talk this through. You can't just say no. The world is changing. Mm-hmm. And so I said, finally, after several of these conversations that Charles had with Tony and me, I said, okay, fine. If we do this, you got to be the first guest. You got to help out.
Throw it back at him. If you go back
and look at the first show, Jim, Charles was
it's
the
Charles.
first guest.
Oh, excuse me, wasn't ready for the end there. That was Tony Korn. That was Mike Wilbon. What am I saying? That was Mike Wilbon with Jim Jackson in talking about how he got his start with PTI. Anyway, also on PTI yesterday was Brian Windhorst, and Brian Windhorst, of course, covers the NBA. And the number one topic, even though they're not playing anymore this year, is the Lakers. And where do they go now after a first-round exit against Minnesota?
I actually think where the Lakers are right now is reminiscent of where the Dallas Mavericks were 2 years ago. That was the year they traded for Kyrie Irving. Remember the big midseason trade? They didn't have size, they didn't have perimeter defense, and they missed the playoffs. So they went out and drafted Derek Lively, who became a rim-protecting lob threat. They went out and signed Derek Jones Jr., a wing athlete, wing defender. And then later on that year, they acquired Daniel Gafford and P.J. Washington. These are not star players, but they were exactly the type of players Luka needed, along with Kyrie. They all fit together. Bam, they make a run to the finals. This is the kind of makeover the Lakers need. They don't need to retrofit the entire roster. They have their star players, but they definitely need size, specifically a rim protector and a guy who can be a lob threat for Luka. They need to go out there and do that. They have one first-round pick, 4 different pick swaps that they can trade. They have 3 or 4 expiring contracts, and depending on what LeBron wants to do with his deal, they might even be able to dip into free agency for a little bit. So let's see where they are on September 1st, and they may end up having built out this team. But this team is deeply flawed, and we saw that over the last 2 weeks.
Brian, you uttered the phrase that'll transition us to the next question, depending on what LeBron wants to do. And it was interesting sitting in there last night and listening to him. I thought he gave just a very genuine, real answer to sort of what he's going to do, which is essentially, I don't know, but much more in depth than that. And I thought revealing, I do not see LeBron retiring after this season. Is there any way you, who know him much better, much longer, do you see anything different?
I think he will continue to play. I don't know he'll continue to play, but I do think he likes where this Lakers team is, and he loves being a Los Angeles Laker, for better or worse. And so he has an opt-out in his contract that he's got to decide on by late June. I would expect him to opt out and re-examine what he wants to do. You know, he's been doing this for the last couple of years. He's got a no-trade clause. He certainly would want to keep that, and he certainly could talk to the Lakers. Last year, he offered to take less money. He said, if you can sign these 3 or 4 players, I'll take less. If he is willing to offer that again, the Lakers could potentially add even another piece. Last year, they weren't able to do it. This year, they might be able to. People want to play in LA. People are going to want to play alongside Luka. The one thing I think you will see, based on what Rob Pelinka said today, Austin Reeves will be a Laker next year. There is some belief that that's a guy they could trade. I don't think they're thinking of that at all. They like the way Austin, Luka Doncic, and LeBron fit together, and I think you're going to see those 3 guys for sure. Everybody else on the roster, except for maybe Bronny James, is probably up in the air.
All right, we'll stay with the Lakers because we got to get to the J.J. Redick of it all. He's coming under some fire. He's catching some heat right now for Game 4, not subbing in the second half. And then Game 5 for not doing anything to stop Rudy Gobert from turning into Wilt with 27 and 24. Brian, where are you on this? I know this morning on Get Up you were critical and said he was immature at times in his approach. Let's elaborate. What did you mean?
Yeah, I don't like saying it because we all have a personal relationship with JJ, and I have such an immense respect for him, and I think he's done a really good job this year. When you are a first-year head coach, you make mistakes. And I don't know whether JJ would say that today or he's going to say that in 5 years. By the way, go to any coach who's had success and you ask them about their first year, they're probably going to close their eyes and go, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that. And I suspect that JJ is going to say that about the way he operated in this series. I think at times JJ seethes. I think he's really smart. I think he's been great for the Lakers, but I think sometimes he seethes. And that puts him in a bad position. And I think he was seething the last few days. I think he made a mistake with how he played those older guys on short rest, that many minutes in Game 4. He, instead of recognizing it, he just doubled down, was almost defiant about it in between Games 4 and 5. And he was still seething coming into the game last night, as he demonstrated in the pregame press conference. I wasn't in the locker room. I don't know how he related to the team, but the Lakers were not ready to play to start that game. They did not come out like a team desperate. And regardless of what you think about the question, whether you think the question he got where he stomped out of the press conference was fair or not, that doesn't matter. A coach handles their business and handles the situation. I think JJ would agree that he needed to handle that better. And I just don't think he was as good as he can be, and I expect in the future that he will be much better. And you always know that. You know that when you hire a coach who's young and never done it before, that you're going to go through this, and the Lakers did. And I think JJ will eventually be even better than he was this year.
We will get you out of here on this, and I'll make it easy because it won't be about the Lakers. It'll be about Giannis Antetokounmpo. What are the chances that Milwaukee actually deals him?
On one hand, Tony, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar left in 1975. They traded him in 1975. They didn't get back to the finals until 2021. Generations. So to let a player like this go is brutal for an organization. But you look at what the Bucks have, where they're going, and you know how expensive they are and their stuff that they've traded. I don't see a viable way forward in the short term that they can create a championship roster around him. He may disagree with me, and he may say, yes, we can, and I'm going to stay here. And if he does that, it will be amazing. But I think it might be best for the team and for Giannis to look for a trade. I don't know for sure that's the way it's going to go, but if you really analyze the situation, I think most people would arrive at that conclusion. And that question, that potential mystery, is the biggest thing hanging over the NBA offseason. A lot of business is going to be on hold, including other star players potentially on the trade market, until that gets answered. And if it does get answered, then where would Giannis want to go? because he's going to have control of this thing.
That's Brian Windhorst yesterday on PTI mentioning Lou Alcindor being traded by the Bucks in 1975. Wow, we're coming up on the 50th anniversary of that. And it's a different time. I mean, in the NBA now, if you're a superstar and you want to go, you go. And you go to the team you want to go, and they send somebody along with you who you want to take with them. That's just the way the league works. 50 years ago, there was no free agency, okay? And yes, you could trade a superstar player, but nobody was going to do it unless you forced their hand. And this was the second time that this had happened in 7 years. Wilt Chamberlain, who was the best big man in the game in 1968, was traded from the Philadelphia 76ers to the Los Angeles Lakers by Jack Ramsey because the leverage he used was, if you don't trade me to the Lakers. That was the only team he was willing to be traded to because he liked the L.A. lifestyle. He built this, beautiful mansion out there on a mountainside and all those things that went along with being Wilt. He said, I'm going to go to the ABA. The ABA was an option. They would have moved heaven and earth to get him, and they would have paid him what he wanted. But they okay, fine. You want to go? We'll trade you. Didn't get equal value. They got guys like Flynn Robinson in the deal, some middle of the road players. And Wilt eventually led the Lakers to the championship in 1972, the year that they won 33 straight games. So it gets to 1975, and Alcindor, he started out as Alcindor, led them to the championship in his second year when they swept the Bullets. They got back to the finals in 1974 when they lost to the Celtics in 7 games. And after the 74-75 season, even though he was in his prime, at that point, Jabbar was only 7 years into his career, so he was like 28, 29 years old. And he said, if you don't trade me, I'll retire. The ABA was still in business. It had one more year to go. I guess conceivably he could have gone to the ABA, although I think he had a contract with the Bucks at that point, so they would have fought him in court. But he managed to get himself traded to the Lakers. He wanted to go back to Los Angeles, where he'd gone to school at UCLA, and they made a deal. And you could never get equal value for a star, especially he at that time was the biggest star in the game. It was a more big man oriented game at that point. And he got himself traded to the Lakers, and they thought, well, okay, we're going to do what we have to do. And how many more years is he going to play? Well, he wound up playing another 14 years. He didn't retire until after the 89 season. And in the meantime, the Lakers won 5 championships with Kareem and, of course, playing with Magic and Worthy and those guys. So it's just funny to look back on that. This Antetokounmpo situation, not really similar to what it was with Jabbar 50 years ago. Interesting that Brian Windhorst made that comparison. Anyway, that's a wrap for me for the week and also for a few days. I'm going to take Monday off, but Bram is coming up next, and I'll see you Tuesday morning at 9 a.m.